All right, guys. Bum. Testing 1, 2, 3. See if this works real quick. It's one of our first live streams. It's like our third one, so just gonna kind of test this out. Probably go for a half hour, 20 minutes or something like that. I just wanted to give you an update about the severe weather out in the East Coast. Since we didn't make a forecast, I thought I'd do a quick update here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start from the south and then work our way north. I mean, there's a huge outbreak going on here in the East Coast. I don't know if the whole country knows about this, but the rest of the country all fine except for the East Coast, and it's Halloween, so pretty late in the season for this. We're going to start all the way down into South Carolina and work our way up as we go through this live stream in North Carolina, Virginia, all the way through Pennsylvania, New York, etc. Right now, we're going to look at South Carolina real quick. And we're going to switch radars here. And I'm going to examine severe weather potential, tornado potential, all that. And then we're also going to look at the forecast as well throughout the next 24 hours across the East Coast. This might be the best radar for this. But you can see this very nasty tail of storms. Now, the tornado potential and hail potential is actually a little bit lower with this. Now, type 1 in the comments, or type where you're from in the comments just to make sure this is working. Yeah, just make sure this is working. It looks like it is, so we'll get on with this. You can see this extends all the way out to maybe Savannah down here, and as you go north, this is where the best lift's going to be, so your best severe weather threat's going to be off to the north, and you can see plenty of lightning within this thing. Let's turn that back off. There's actually severe weather outbreak or severe storms for this region right here. This very tightly packed gradient in the radar signature indicates typically wind. So your best wind threat is going to be right along this line when you see them tightly packed together. When you go farther south here, it's kind of more spread out. Wind's going to be a lot weaker down there. So we're going to focus in on this area right here. And we're also going to look, as we go to the north, we're going to look for these little notches. When you get lots of outflow like that, and then some inflow, you're going to get little notches, and sometimes you can get tornado threats within those. And those can be kind of scary, especially if you're trick-or-treating. These are the types of tornadoes that can be rain-wrapped. Now, there's not one in here. I'm just using this as an example. But these are usually rain-wrapped. They're very quick. They come out of nowhere, so they can be very dangerous. Typically not too strong, but they can be dangerous. So let's look at the wind speeds here. We're going to go to base reflectivity here. Turn on this base velocity. Go to super res. This is a radar scope, so anyone can actually use this. And see if we can turn on the animation here. Turn that right on. And there's actually a little bit of rotation in there. You can see the surge of wind coming out of this thing. And we'll turn on, let's see where it's looking like maybe 50 miles an hour out of that. And I think I can move this forward. So this is near Manning and now Greenville as well. There's a little pocket of rain in there. The wind speeds aren't that bad down here as you head towards Vance, Santee, Greeleyville, excuse me. And then Manning and King Street up to Lake City. This is the area we want to watch. This is the strongest winds in this band right here. And that's probably going to be about 50 miles an hour, 58. Really nothing crazy with that particular system. But let's move our way north. And as we get towards, this is going to be near Florence. There's another severe warning out. I believe we can click these. Yeah, there we go. Hold on. We'll see what this is for. This expires in 3 minutes. This is going to be for about 50. It's moving northeast at 55 miles an hour. I wonder what they're warning this for. It said tornado watch. Looks like pretty nasty. I'm not seeing. It looks like hail and wind for that, but hail threat's going to be pretty low with this system. Overall, the winds don't look terrible up there. I'm going to switch radars. We're going to go a little bit farther north into Maine, where the main action is here in North Carolina and Virginia. There's actually several tornado warnings out. We're going to switch to, I think this radar would be best right now. And we're going to turn on base velocity real quick just to see the general view here. And yeah, there is some couplets in here. There's one right here. I wouldn't be surprised to see a tornado warning actually extended south. We'll look at that in a second. There's one right here. You can see that kind of that, it's almost a V shape. There's going to be some inflow and a little bit of outflow coming out of there. So that's near Oxford. As we move to the north, Clarksville, probably another tornado warning. Yeah, obviously there's one right here, but you can see that kind of that notch right there. That means there's strong inflow getting sucked into this thing. Lots of rain and lightning behind this thing. So there's a serious lightning, wind, rain show behind Clarksville. This area, I wouldn't have to worry about the tornado back there. The rain is actually going to sweep out a lot of cold air. That's going to circulate in with this warm air, and you're going to get some circulations, and you can kind of see that in the radar signature. So let's turn on the base reflectivity to see our winds and see where our circulations are. I'm going to go to tilt 1. This is near the surface. Keep doing that. Let's base velocity. And then we'll look at the, see if there's any circulations. Really nothing all that strong, but let's go back a few frames. And that's toggling it. Let's go back. We'll put an animation on this and just see if there's any extreme circulations in that area. There was a little bit earlier. Turn that back off. Go back a couple frames. There was a little bit of circulation out here. You can see that kind of that gate-to-gate type of shear. You got winds, going away from the radar and then winds going toward, but really it's kind of broad circulation. Doesn't look like any tornadoes actually touched the ground. But really with these quasi-linear type systems, when you get these squall lines, these tornadoes are very brief. Sometimes they don't get detected by the radar. When they're very spread out like that, you can get a very small little spin up along these lines. With a supercell, you usually have a little bit more of a warning in advance. You can kind of see them on radar, how they organize. But with these linear systems, they can happen very rapidly. Typically aren't damaging, but they can be. So, you still have to take these seriously. But there is a little bit of circulation in there. A little bit of circulation in there as well. It's southeast of Roxborough a ways. That's moving northeast. These things are racing to the northeast. Another tornado up near Clarksville towards Boynton, Chase City. New severe warning just came out. But you can see there's a little bit of circulation in here. So I would say Clarksville is kind of under the gun right now, or just north of that. There's a tornado warning out for that area, but you can see that the greens and reds, obviously there's a couplet in there. But let's turn the base reflectivity back on real quick. Go to tilt 1, wait for that to load. So a little bit of circulation in there, and there's that notch, that inflow notch probably right in there. Outflow, lots of lightning behind this thing. Pretty crazy for this time of year. Looks like there's a pretty strong surge of wind coming out near Chase City when you get that tightly packed gradient. Lots of precipitation behind it usually, and it's kind of got that bow look, probably a decent amount of rain and wind. But the tornado threat, not terribly strong right now. Again, it's a lot of weak, brief tornadoes if they're going to happen. We're going to switch radars, and we're going to go into Virginia now. Then we're going to go up to New York, and then what I'm going to do is look at the forecast real quick for the rest of the night. Let's zoom into Virginia here. Everyone type where you're from in the comments. Ask some questions. Eventually get to them here. So this is going to be North Carolina here. This is moving really fast to the northeast at like 50 miles an hour. So it's only 30 miles right here. So McKinney, Blackstone, those areas, this could be in that area within probably 30 minutes or so. So pretty crazy, but there's a notch in there. There's some pretty strong outflow to the east of Chase City. There's probably some powerful winds in that area. Let's look at the velocity here. And it's kind of glitching out as that's near the end of the radar. Let's see if there's a better radar frame here, a better radar to use. Try this one out. Probably won't be much better. It's kind of on the edge, so it's kind of hard to tell. Go back to this one. But I would suspect there's pretty strong winds Let's turn this thing on. And yeah, about 60-mile-an-hour winds. The thing about radars is when you get farther away from the radar, it's kind of like a beam. So this is the surface. Here's the radar. It's kind of looking up in the atmosphere, and your surface winds are below it. So it's not the best accurate representation of the wind. It would not surprise me based off the base reflectivity. We're also looking farther up with that, but wouldn't be surprised to see 60, 70, maybe 80-mile-an-hour winds in a small little pocket in that region. Moving to the northeast here in parts of southern Virginia here. We'll move to the north a little bit and look at these tornado warnings. There's a little couplet just to the west of Columbia. See if we have a better radar for that one. Looks kind of suspicious. I don't think we do. You know, it'd be nice if there's a radar right up there somewhere. So, yeah, a couple of circulations in here. Just nothing crazy strong. Go back to base reflectivity. Really, the thing that you want to watch out for these is they're lines, and there's lots of little tiny storms embedded in here. So they're going to pop up, and you're going to see several different areas of circulation pop up with these types of systems. And it's going to be very brief, very weak, but still, nonetheless, you got to watch out for these things. So Columbia, definitely a little bit concerning near Columbia. And as we move to the north, the storms are a lot, you know, you can see a lot weaker up here, probably just embedded thunder and rain for the most part. It's a lot more spread out. It doesn't look as severe. Maybe a little isolated, strong storm there. But as we go towards New York, we also have another batch of severe weather up here in Pennsylvania and New York. We'll turn those radars on. You really can see that this area, it doesn't look like classic severe weather, but there is lots of wind in here. The tornado threat's a lot weaker. You're not going to get tornadoes typically in this area, in this type of this region of the storm, but you can get some wind. There's lots of shear in the atmosphere. Strong storm systems with like this can produce some heavy wind behind these storms. And there's not going to be a whole lot of thunder with this either. Not much lightning's detected, just a very widespread area of heavy rain and probably a lot of wind for Syracuse, Utica, all the way down into Pennsylvania as well. And that will start to impact Albany pretty soon here as we transition towards nighttime, past 9 o'clock, which we'll look at real quick. We'll look at the forecast for the rest of the night here. We're going to go over to pivotalweather.com. We're looking at the HRR model, and it's around 7 p.m. right now. So we're going to go to, let's see if they have the latest update. So we got 23Z run, which was a couple of, the model was ran a couple hours ago, but the data is coming out now. So we'll use that and see if we can get this moved. Now, what we're looking at here is the moisture. Now, I'm going to look at the best area for tornadoes. So this is 7 p.m. This is right now. And as you can see, our best area, on the radar was actually kind of in this area, which makes a lot of sense because you're going to get your best tornadoes typically where the winds are kind of out of the south and southeast. That means there's going to be a lot more directional wind shear in the atmosphere, which is going to cause some circulation in the atmosphere, which can help severe storms. This is a very strong moving cold front, which will kind of overall limit the tornado threat. It's very strong moving, and so you kind of got this line of storms. It kind of blows storms up all at once along the front when you get fast moving cold fronts and sharp moisture cutoffs. That really limits the tornado threat, but because there's so much wind shear in the atmosphere, that's kind of canceling out just a little bit. If this was moving slower, this cold front, and it was oriented maybe just a little bit more maybe vertically in a way, and it just wasn't as strong, you'd probably be talking about a tornado outbreak out in this region right here. And if we had a little more instability too, but luckily that doesn't appear to be the case. Cold front's a little bit weaker down here, and then as you go to the north, you're talking more just general rain up there. There's not as much moisture up there for these hail and tornado threats. So let's look at what we're going to look at is a significant tornado parameter. So this is kind of measuring the tornado potential We'll go out to 7 p.m. As you can see earlier, it was a little more elevated. But at 7 p.m., you can look really elevated in those areas where the tornado warnings were in parts of North Carolina and Virginia, particularly the east half, also a little bit in South Carolina. And as we head towards 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., that's going to kind of die out. Typically, tornado threats will die out as we head towards nighttime and after dark as the instability decreases. And we'll look at the instability real quick. This is kind of measuring the energy and potency in the atmosphere for these severe storms. And you really need about 750 of this, in my experience, storm chasing for some tornadoes. And we are kind of right on the edge here. 750 is going to be that dark gray, light blue area, or dark blue area. And you can see that kind of extends all the way out in this region right here. It's more strong as you head towards South Carolina and North Carolina. Now, the shear is actually better up here than it is down here. So that kind of cancels things out just a little bit for that weak instability. Can actually, the wind shear can kind of carry the show, can kind of take over the ball game and really help out areas in Virginia, North Carolina to support some tornado development. Look at New York and Pennsylvania. There's really just no instability up there, maybe like 250 up there. So tornadoes just really hard to come by up there. We can look at Max Cape. This is going to measure the most unstable cape. So this is going to measure like elevated severe storms. And you can see that there is some up in New York's and Pennsylvania, just not a whole lot. But there is a little bit more of that. So you can have some elevated stuff up there. But for the most part, it's just going to be rain and wind up there. And pretty strong out here in South Carolina and North Carolina. But overall, not too bad. Supercell composite, not going to really look at this because it's more of a line event. I think what we'll look at is the future radar. So essentially, it's the composite reflectivity that we were looking at earlier on radar, but we're going to fast forward it into the future. As you can see, this is 7 p.m. You got a nice line going from South Carolina all the way up to New York. Looks more choppy than it actually looked on radar, but it does line out. I think that lining out will continue, and the tornado threat will start to diminish after around 9 p.m. This will continue to move to the east. This is 10 p.m. Starts to reach the coast. Probably going to weaken out by the time it hits New York City and the southeast parts of New York. And then really to the coast, I think it's going to really weaken out. Typically with these systems, when they get organized and then they lose instability overnight, they kind of just fizzle out a little bit. There's going to be a lot of wind shear that's going to help support this thing either way. But as you can see, this is around 1 p.m. or so. This is 10, 11, 12, 1. Kind of continues. So, the severe weather threat certainly exists all the way out to the coast. But your best threat's going to be kind of within this region right here for the rest of the night. Redraw that. So probably somewhere in this region for the rest of the night is going to be your best threat for severe weather for the rest of the night. So let's look at that wind shear real quick, and I'm going to talk about that 500 millibar jet that we're talking about. This is what's responsible for this severe weather for the most part. You had enough of moisture coming up, you had enough instability, but this is the jet streak here. You're talking 110 miles an hour, or knots, which is even more in mile an hour. I mean, probably 120 miles an hour somewhere in this region, 130, moving to the east. Now, that's not really overlapping the storms. The storms are kind of in this region right here, but you're still getting 100 so knots in that area. So at the surface, you got these southeast winds, and then way above, you got southwest winds at 100 knots. So you can imagine what that's doing to your circulation in the atmosphere. You're essentially getting your storms to develop, and then what's happening is here's kind of the surface, your southeast winds. Imagine these are like out of the southwest up here, and they're at 100 miles an hour. So it's blowing the precipitation away from the updraft. And that's going to continue to build those updrafts. So even if we don't have much instability, those updrafts, whatever they do get, will just keep building and building because of that shear. And so you can get long-lasting squall lines like this that move all the way out into the ocean. And that's going to happen as we head towards, 1 a.m. or so. This is the current conditions. I think this is, this is the SPC meso-analysis page. And this is actually showing you more current data. So this is another cool tool we use. You can check it out at spc.noaa.gov. You can find it on there. Let's look at the wind shear here. And you can see 80 miles an hour, or that looks like 65 or so knots. But yeah, that's pretty nuts. It's probably in the 70s in terms of miles an hour. Bulk shear, yeah, it's cranking. And then the instability, as you can see, is just a lot weaker, but it does have about 1,000 cape extending into Virginia and then 500 elsewhere. But that shear is really helping out this system. I'm going to look at radar one more time, then we're going to wrap it up for the night here. And then stay tuned tomorrow. We got a long-range forecast coming out for first 2 weeks of November. And then Saturday, I'm going to release the winter forecast Saturday, so get ready for that. So, New York, we kind of covered this area. Lots of rain, lots of wind up in this area. We'll turn the wind speeds on here, the base reflectivity or base velocity. I'm curious to see how much rain fell up there too, because there's quite a bit of rain coming out here. Super res velocity, plenty of wind up there. Something does not look right there, but there's a lot of glitching going on way out, far out, away from the radar. I'm really curious to see how much rain we got here first. So we'll go to, how about try digital storm total. And yeah, just plenty of rain. We got about 1.5 inches in some areas, some of these purple areas in the 2-inch range, kind of right in this area right here. Syracuse and areas to the north, probably looking at about 1 inch or so that fell. This area up here, just northwest, maybe 1 inch or 2. To the south near Hamilton, looks like a Utica, a nice band of 1 to 3 inches in that region, and it's continuing too. So this area could, some areas in here could receive 2, 3, 4 inches of rain after this thing moves to the east, and maybe some areas in these streaks even more than that. So pretty incredible. Let's turn our focus to the tornado warnings, see if these things have blown up at all. And I'm going to switch to the KAKQ radar. Lots of lightning in there. Yeah, plenty of rain behind these things. About 1 inch to 2 inches. We'll go out to the velocity or the reflectivity. And this is kind of looking interesting. Definitely in here, there's some kind of, you can see that notch in there now. Nice little appendage right there. That's definitely concerning when you get that kind of look, when you get those kind of, appendages in the line. Typically a classic supercells, you're going to have a nice hook and then a forward flank downdraft. But when you get these lines, you want to look for these little notches in these lines, because this is more of a linear setup, and he definitely got one in there, so we'll look at that in a second. Probably got another one maybe in there, so just northwest of South Hill. Boynton's tornado warning just expired, so that's good news. To the south, it's mostly severe warnings. So I'm going to turn on the base reflectivity or velocity real quick, super res velocity. This is radar scope for everyone who's asking. It's a pretty nifty radar, only about $10. And yeah, there you can see that gate-to-gate shear. This is north of Crewe, northeast of Burkeville. Nothing strong. This is not tornadic, this is not a tornado by any stretch of the imagination. You want to see a lot tighter circulation. You really want to see dark reds and bright greens next to each other, but there is some weak circulation. Now, the tornado warning just expired, so that's good news. But I would definitely still keep an eye on this area as it moves to the northeast. Luckily, not any terribly populated cities, but as this line moves towards just south of Richmond, as you get towards Chester, Hopeville, Petersburg, this is definitely something going to be one we want to watch here. Let's go look to the south here near Chase City. Nothing terrible down here. See if the radar is... This radar might be better. It's very hard to tell. But, for the most part, it does not look like anything on the ground at the moment. Very just one directional. You don't see any couplets. The issue is, again, as we get farther away from the radar, you're looking farther up into the atmosphere, which means you're looking way up into the storm. So it's harder to see ground circulation. But either way, even farther up, there's no circulation either. So not terribly concerned for this region right there. But tornado warning, so definitely got to take it seriously. If you look at the reflectivity, it is pretty nasty looking. Definitely have to keep watching it. There's a nice batch of wind coming out, nice little bow of wind coming out with this system. Now, with these systems, there's not a whole lot of hail because there's not a lot of instability. We can turn something called VIL on, which is vertically integrated liquid. That can kind of estimate our best hail size. I think there might be a higher res version. Yeah, there's one right here. And you can kind of see where the elevated hail chances are across this line. As you go north, where that instability cuts off, you just don't get as much hail. These elevated colors over here, they're your greens, yellows, reds. As you go towards white, that's about 80. And these light blues, that's like 1 or 2. You can see it's much weaker as you go north. And that's where that instability was really dropping off. Your instability is best as you head towards the Carolinas here, and maybe even Virginia as well. And you can see the hail threat is much increased down here. But overall, I've storm chased a lot, and this is more of my specialty. Severe weather is, and this is typically when you get VIL like this, it's like pea-size hail or so. We can use the radar to estimate, but I like to look at this when we're looking at tons of different areas. And as you can see, near Chase City, just to the south, just very small for the most part. But there is some hail in these probably with this look. The best area is going to be near Stem, Butner, and as this moves to the northeast towards Henderson. Definitely might get a little batch of some peas and dimes and stuff as you head towards maybe Norlena, as well as this squall line moves to the east, and then this area as well as it moves towards Alberta, McKinney. This thing is racing to the northeast. It's moving northeast at about 55 miles an hour or so. As you turn on the storm tracks, we just got a new one. We'll see what that shows here. Showing a hail size of 1/2 inch. I think that's overdone. Hail sizes are usually overestimated by the radar in my experience. Lots of lightning behind it, though. Yeah, there could be some pretty decent sized hail in there. Northeast at 43 knots, which is closer to 50 miles an hour. And then we'll look at the stem down here, or Sturm. Yeah, hail size about 0.5. I could see that being more accurate. You got some pretty good VIL in there. That's moving to the northeast at 45, 50 miles an hour. It's moving towards Henderson. That's only about 17 miles away, which is really meaning you're only going to get that. It'll be there in about 15, 20 minutes, so not too far away from that area. But otherwise, the hail threat doesn't look to be terrible. So we'll go in an area near southwest of Raleigh, and you look at the VIL, and it's a lot weaker down here, and the radar's not even estimating hail down here. So you can see that VIL is kind of a good estimation for hail. It's not the perfect bet, but it is kind of nice, so you can kind of use it on your radar apps. We'll go down to a new radar here in North Carolina and look at Raleigh. Yeah, the VIL is pretty weak down here, so I wouldn't worry about hail too much in this region. Definitely got to keep it watched because there is instability down that region, but the hail is not the main threat here. Look at the wind real quick. Wait for that to load. The super res velocity. That's typically the one I'll be using. And for the most part, not too bad. I think oh, this didn't even change. All right, hold on here a second. Yeah, so for the past 20 minutes, I think the wrong slide has been on here. So my bad for that. Again, this is a test. We'll be definitely fine-tuning this in the future. Wow, that was pretty interesting there. It was actually stuck on the SPC page. So let's get back to radar scope now. So ignore the past 20 minutes. We're going to redo this real quick. We'll do this one more time, and then we'll wrap it up. Again, this is kind of a test that we're kind of weeding out through the technical difficulties here. But as you can see, again, we'll look at this real quick. So I think that's back on. Looks like it is. So past 20 minutes were just kind of the wrong slide, but here we are again. So this is radar scope. You can actually download this. It's only like $10 on the app store. As you can see in north parts of this storm system up in New York, there's lots of rain up here. It's mostly just rain and wind. There's not a whole lot of lightning. And we're gonna go to the look at how much rain fell here. So we'll look at the storm total. Yeah, we'll look at the digital storm total. And like I was saying earlier, there's these streaks of like 1 to 3 inches in parts of this area. You can see Syracuse, just to northwest of Syracuse, you got 1 to 2 inches in this region, 1 to 3 inches down here, kind of in this pinkish purple area near Utica, probably getting nailed with rain, and that's going to continue. Probably going to get another good inch as this thing moves to the east. So lots of rain up in that region. We'll go south into Virginia and look at our tornado warnings real quick. And we'll switch radars here. So we'll go to a radar tool, switch to KAKQ. As you can see, the rains are stacking up behind these systems. These storm systems, probably 1 to 2 inches. Look at the base reflectivity real quick. Near South Hill is where our tornado warning is. Actually, there's another one to the north. We'll look at that real quick. So we're going to go moving north to south here. Yeah, it doesn't look classic by any stretch of the imagination, but there probably is some circulation in this little notch here with these lines. You know, a classic supercell is going to kind of look like this, with a tornado threat being kind of right in that region. But because we got lines, we got squall lines, it's harder for these tornadoes to develop. But where they do develop, this is a typical squall line. This is a squall line with tornadoes here to the right. You get these little notches within these lines. That's what you want to look for with these tornado threats. A little bit of a notch in there. So look at the velocity real quick. And this is near Louisiana. Yeah, and southwest of Mineral. Yeah, there is a little bit of circulation in there. There's one right here, and then there's one right here. This is moving to the east, northeast, probably northeast, at about 50 miles an hour. So, get rid of that. 50 miles an hour. So we can look at the little pins here. Actually, this is moving faster than that. It's moving at 60 miles an hour nearly. It's 53 knots on the radar. No hail to worry about, according to the radar. Yeah, so there's definitely some circulation in these regions. This is moving towards Mineral, and it's not that far away. If you look at this, this is about 18 miles, but it's only about 15, 20 minutes away with how fast this is moving. And that's going to move probably near and just south of Mineral. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but... And then you got Bowling Green out here. Still pretty far away from that region, but that will have to be watched later in the evening here. Here's a new frame. Circulation right there, circulation right there, circulation right there. These are kind of popping up everywhere. Like I said, along these lines, they're typically weaker, but they're very quick and unpredictable. They're little tiny, typically tiny rain-wrapped tornadoes that you get. I would say this area is kind of concerning right here. That's northwest of Columbia, or northeast of Columbia, moving towards just to the south of Mineral. And really, for the most part, I wouldn't expect, if this was to tornado down here, for this to be a long track tornado that goes miles. It just doesn't happen with these types of things. But you're going to get little blips that kind of pop up in and out of these lines. And that's, it's really a game time decision. So either way, when you get a tornado warning, take it seriously, obviously, and pay attention to the National Weather Service. But this is the area you want to watch. You can see the greens, the reds, the little couplet in that region. We'll switch back to the super res velocity and see if we can kind of see that. Yeah, there's a little bit of circulation. best bet's going to be kind of in that region right there. Might have a little bit of an inflow notch coming in. It's got some outflow coming out. So you get cold rain coming out like that, a little bit of inflow coming in. You might get a little bit of circulation in that region. Maybe you get some down here eventually. Kind of a weaker storm system, but definitely want to watch that. As we head towards the south here, there was some tornado potential up here. The tornado warning has actually expired, so much less of a tornado threat for Richmond and places to the southeast. This doesn't look as promising up here. It's a lot weaker. The values are kind of spread out. It just doesn't look as strong for the most part. Let's go to the south here. We're going to wrap it up in about 5 or so minutes. Got some plans here in a second, but I'm curious to see this area. This is going to be to the west of Alberta, to the southwest of McKinney. This is really impacting, for the most part, the southern end of Virginia, south central Virginia. This line is the nastiest. This has the highest tornado potential, and the best ingredients in the atmosphere with this system converges in this area right here, and it's going to kind of track to the northeast. And the best kind of area of severe weather potential is probably going to be in this box right here that I just drew for the rest of the night as we head towards maybe 10 p.m. or so. I really think the best threat is going to be right within this region right here. So that is the area we're going to want to watch for the rest of the night. Now, let's look at the tornado potential down here near Alberta and to the west and near South Hill and La Crosse. You can see that there is a little appendage here. You can see that kind of that spike coming in. This area I'm definitely concerned about. There's a little bit of an inflow notch right here, an RFD kind of pumping out some heavy rain. There might be a tornado within that region, or a tornado threat at least. Look at the super res velocity and look at the tilt here, the surface tilt, and nothing getting picked up on radar here. But it is kind of far away from the radar. But for the most part, it doesn't look like anything extreme. Maybe a little bit of rotation up there, but it would not surprise me to see some rotation. But there is some like 60-mile-an-hour winds up here near Kenbridge. Looking like maybe 70 miles an hour or so. Some very strong winds up there near Kenbridge. This thing is moving to the northeast about 50 miles an hour. It's got half-inch hail according to it. We'll look at the hail threat as well. So this is what I was talking about earlier. You can go down to super res, or it's actually called digital vertically integrated liquid. And this kind of measures our hail threat. Like I said, in my experience, when you get these blues and greens, it's typically like pea-size hail or less than that. It's not always perfect, but, it's typically pretty weak. But you can see your best hail threat is going to be in North Carolina, Virginia, for the most part. Looks like maybe all the way up to the east or the west of Washington, D.C. But, for the most part, it just doesn't look like a hail event to me. The dynamics aren't there. There's not enough instability. Your best threat's going to be down here. And this is going to be northwest of Middleburg. This is moving towards South Hill and La Crosse. So this little batch of hail is going to be your best threat. That's moving towards South Hill, La Crosse, Lawrenceville. This might even make it into Middleburg, maybe even Kittrell down here, a little batch down there. Again, probably just pea-size hail. At worst, you get dimes. If you look at the radar and what the radar's saying, it's actually saying half-inch hail. But from my experience, the radar seems to overdo hail all the time. So I'm not too concerned about that. Little batch near Fayetteville. Look at that real quick. So that's pretty far away from the radar, so we'll switch. Nah, it doesn't look too bad for the most part. Let's see what the radar's saying. It's actually not popping up on there, but I wouldn't suspect there'd be anything too terrible down there. We'll look at the winds here, and we'll look at the winds all the way down to South Carolina and North Carolina. And we'll go back to super res velocity. And for the most part, you're dealing with maybe like 30 to 40 mile an hour winds within this line here. You can see little surges coming out. But for the most part, I think the winds along this squall line, probably 30, 40 miles an hour behind it. But where you do get your severe warnings, you're going to have stronger winds. As you can see down here, you're talking much more strong winds down here. This radar might be better for this. Wait for that to load. Yeah, it's because it's in between radars. It might be harder to tell, but you could be dealing with 60-mile-an-hour winds down here just to the east or to the west of Fayetteville, moving to the east, northeast, at about 50 miles an hour or so, 40 to 50 miles an hour. You're dealing with maybe good 50, 60-mile-an-hour winds with this thing. Really all along this thing, I would say all the way up to New York. As you can see, there are severe warnings all over the place, and it's mostly for wind. In areas where you aren't under severe warning, you're probably still going to get a good 20 to 40 mile an hour windstorm behind this thing. So there's a big long area of rain and lots of wind behind this. So it's a very strong tail coming through. We'll look at the super res velocity or reflectivity one more time. Now, as you can see here, when you get the storms kind of spread out like that, you can see these this is the DBZ values. They're kind of spread out. Tornado threat's going to be a little bit weaker when you see that. The wind threat typically a little bit weaker, but with this system it's so dynamic, you're going to get wind along all of this. Hail threat's going to be a little bit weaker. So this looks mostly just like a heavy rain and wind threat for most people, except for the areas here in Virginia and the farthest north parts of North Carolina, where you do have a little bit more of an organized complex. This is the most concerning area up here, from about Blackstone all the way down to Stovall, maybe all the way down to just northeast of Durham. So this line and points to the northeast is probably going to be the most concerning area as we head towards the rest of the night. So that includes, probably south of Richmond, but for the most part, it's going to be southeast Virginia. Okay, so that's going to be your best bet for this tornado threat and severe weather threat, especially. But again, wind is going to continue along and to the east of the system throughout the rest of the night. So either way, this is going to be a pretty dynamic system. So I think that's going to wrap it up for now. This is mostly a test event, just kind of weeding out and testing a bunch of different things here. I think I'm going to have a lot more on here. Like, for instance, I think we're going to have live streams of like storm chasing and viewer submitted photos. I think that would be cool. Comment below some other ideas you guys have. We'll try to get this going. We'll probably have some guests as well. So I think this will be kind of cool in the future. This is just kind of testing for next spring, because I think we're going to have lots of severe weather in the spring here coming up soon, a few months from now. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, winter forecast is coming out Saturday, and then tomorrow we're going to be releasing a long-range forecast through about mid-November. So hope you enjoyed the video. Again, comment some ideas below that you have for these live streams, and we'll see you soon.